My Karen sister comes to my house with her family and insists that I give her my home because she needs more space for her family. Here's what happened when I refused to give in to her unreasonable demands. I never thought my own family would be the ones to force me out of my own house, but that's exactly what happened to me a few months ago. I'm a woman in my mid-20s, and I live in a large house that my parents gave to me as a gift. I've been living here for several years now, and have been taking care of it as my own. I always thought that my family would be happy for me and proud of my achievements, but I couldn't have been more wrong. It all started on a lazy Sunday afternoon when I was enjoying my day off from work, lounging around in my cozy living room. I was binge-watching my favorite show on Netflix and sipping on some hot cocoa when I heard a knock at the door. I got up to answer it, expecting to see a friend or a neighbor, but to my surprise, it was my sister, who we'll call Karen, with her husband and 2 kids in tow. "Hey sis, what brings you here?" I asked, trying to hide my surprise. "Hi, can we come in?" Karen said, brushing past me and making herself at home in my living room. I was a bit taken aback by her brashness, but I didn't say anything. I knew Karen could be demanding, but I didn't expect her to be so entitled. I soon found out that Karen and her family wanted to stay at my place for a few days while they were in town for a family event. At first I was hesitant, but Karen was persistent, and I eventually relented, hoping that their stay wouldn't be too much of a hassle. But from the moment they arrived, things started to go downhill. They complained about everything, from the food I cooked to the bedding I provided. "Ugh, this bed is so uncomfortable," Karen whined, tossing and turning in the guest room. "I'm sorry, Karen. I'll try to find some extra pillows or blankets to make it more comfortable for you," I said, trying to be accommodating. But no matter what I did, it was never enough for Karen and her family. They would always find something to complain about, and I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. It wasn't until the 3rd day of their stay that Karen revealed her true intentions. We were sitting in the living room, chatting and drinking coffee, when Karen suddenly turned to me and said, "You know, I've always loved this house. It would be perfect for me and my family." I was taken aback by her statement, and I didn't know how to respond. I mean, this was my house, the one my parents had given to me as a gift. I had worked hard to maintain it and make it a home for myself. How could Karen even suggest that she should have it instead? "I don't know what you're talking about, Karen. This is my house and I'm not giving it up," I said firmly, hoping that would be the end of it. But Karen didn't take no for an answer. She became increasingly demanding, making it clear that she wouldn't leave without the house. She even threatened to sue me and make my life a living hell if I didn't comply with her demands. "You have no right to this house. It should be mine. You're just lucky our parents gave it to you," Karen shouted, her face turning red with anger. I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. I loved this house, and I didn't want to give it up, but I didn't know how to stand up to Karen and her family. They were being so unreasonable and aggressive, and I felt like I was in over my head. At that moment, Karen spoke up. "You know what, sis? We're not asking for anything too much. We just need a bigger space to live in, and your house is just perfect. You live here all by yourself, and you barely use any of these rooms. I think it's only fair that you give us this house. After all, Mom and Dad gave it to you, but they never said you can't share it with your family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was my house, and I had every right to do whatever I wanted with it. I tried to reason with Karen, but she was not having any of it. She just kept on arguing, and before I knew it, her husband and kids joined in. They all started to gang up on me, shouting and calling me names. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel my blood boiling. I told them firmly, "This is my house, and I am not giving it up. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but it's not going to happen." But Karen and her family were not going to take no for an answer. They continued to badger me, saying that I was being selfish and ungrateful. They told me that I didn't deserve this house, and that I should be ashamed of myself for not sharing it with my family. As the days went by, the situation only escalated. They became more demanding, and even started to destroy some of my belongings. One day, when I came back from work, I found that they had trashed the living room and thrown some of my furniture out of the window. I was livid. I confronted Karen, and that's when she told me that they were planning to sue me for the house. I was in complete shock. I couldn't believe that my own sister would do something like that to me. I felt like I was at my wit's end, and I didn't know what to do. That's when I decided to seek legal help. I talked to a lawyer who helped me understand my rights and what I could do to protect myself and my home. But even with legal assistance, the situation only worsened. Karen and her family refused to leave, and they continued to harass me day and night. I was living in constant fear and couldn't even sleep at night. Finally, one day, things came to a head. Karen and her family physically tried to force me out of the house. I was left with no other choice but to call the police. It was a chaotic scene, with Karen and her family screaming and yelling at me and the police officers. The police were trying to calm everyone down, but Karen and her family were still insisting that they were the rightful owners of the house. "This is our family home, and she's trying to steal it from us," Karen screeched, pointing at me. The police officers looked confused, and I could see that they were starting to believe Karen's lies. I knew that I had to act fast if I wanted to keep my home. "Officers, please listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This house was a gift from my parents to me. I have all the necessary documents to prove that it's mine." I quickly retrieved the documents from my safe and handed them over to the police. They examined them carefully and soon realized that Karen and her family had no legal claim to the house. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it looks like this house belongs to you," one of the officers said to me. "We'll have to ask you to leave the property now." Relief flooded through me as Karen and her family were escorted out of my home. I couldn't believe how close I had come to losing it all. "You had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I'm so glad you were able to win your home back from those horrible people. And it's a nice house too, good for you. So sorry about what happened to your sister though." So, anyway, original poster. You should definitely call the police again if Karen and her family ever come back. Or even if they just try to come around and bother you some more. If they do that, then the police can arrest them for trespassing. And that would be good, because it would show them that they can't just come into your house whenever they want and act like it's theirs. Entitled staff member discriminates against disabled child for collapsing on the platform. Hi all, I do apologize if I can't get into much detail. It's an incredibly traumatic incident for me, and I do have PTSD flashbacks whenever I talk about it. So please do bear with me. I'm currently 16 and have had autism for almost all of my life, and have had mental health issues from previous trauma in the school system. But recently, I was diagnosed with a functional neurological disorder, or FND, called drop attacks. FND is quite a tricky subject as there's not a lot of research into FND and often ignored by people. Think of your brain as a computer. There's the physical hardware for the brain, and then there's the software. FND is pretty much glitches in the software in the brain. It can literally affect every function of the body. For me, it can either during physical or mental stress causing my body to slowly shut down to the basic functions for survival. It normally starts with my voice shutting down, then I can't walk, then I can't stand, and then fall to the ground. This can all happen from a few seconds to about 20 minutes, and often I don't get the proper assistance that I require, even if I'm with a support worker. The most common assumption is that I'm in my mid to late 20s and on drugs. This is where we'll meet Jeffries. That's Station Master Jeffries. Yeah, right. Jeffries is the station duty manager of Gordon, probably named after that arrogant bloat of an express engine, and has a reputation for being not the most helpful, kind, or understanding staff. I only met him once before when somebody put a stone in the lift that I couldn't remove by myself, but I didn't realize the full force of Jeffries until a few months later. Gordon is mostly a quiet station compared to the city. It has one small footbridge with stairs to the 3 platforms. Only one was open, the turnback, as there was track work further up the line, and that was the last place they could terminate. It was during Vivid, one of Sydney's most important events of the year. It was the first time it was back in 3 years, and was during the last Queen's birthday long weekend. Track work further up the line caused trains to terminate at Gordon, and I had to change at Gordon to continue. I was filming all the hustle and bustle of the station, seeing what changes could be made at the station to ease overcrowding. I do town planning as a hobby, and noticed that people were still rushing for trains that weren't going to depart for another 7 minutes. That's because nobody was actually out there actively helping customers or giving out information. There also wasn't adequate information, like bus timetables, departure screens, nor automatic announcement. That meant that people were traveling blind. And because everyone was rushing, people were using only one carriage. I knew that further down the line where more people live, there'd be dangerous overcrowding as you got into the city, so I just went and told people coming down the stairs where it was going, when it was going to depart, where it was the least overcrowding, and that's it. Somebody in the office must have seen what's happening and didn't act like what over 90% of people do. Be kind and thankful, but they most have obviously seen a poster from years ago when they attempted to arrest me for impersonating a staff member, when literally everyone was fine and was actively encouraged. It reminded me a lot of somebody called Darius from the NYC subway who was also on the subway. The MTA and the court system in New York didn't understand what was actually going on and locked him away in prison, and now in asylum since the 70s, the latest was 2018. Sydney trains were very well aware about what was happening, and we fought tooth and nail to just be allowed to get to essential services. And that security alert was well removed by that point, and was supposed to be replaced by a different poster saying, "This is me, these things happen. If you're concerned, please ring blah blah blah." Nobody has ever seen that poster. So Jeffries then stormed out of the office and heard a good old Aussie "OI" as he marched down the stairs. I just froze there as I didn't know what was going to happen. I've had staff attempt to steal my bike, kick my bottom, attempt to tranquilize me, and worse when I froze before in public, mostly on the trains. While I was panicking in my head, I couldn't hear him saying, "Come with me now. What do you think you're doing? You need to come upstairs with me off the station now." He then went and blocked me from being able to leave the station. He then threatened to call my parents about this, all in my face. If he actually did that, he would have quite quickly learned the truth that my parents aren't as gullible as that. I remember his fists closed, which put me into even more of a panic as I thought he was going to hurt me. He then said, "What's your name?" And I couldn't say my name because I physically couldn't say it. He then said, "Don't freeze on me. I've heard about you before. If you're freezing on me, I'll have you removed," right into my ear. After I couldn't say anything, he then went on his walkie-talkie to ask anyone if they knew me. I know quite a lot of the staff around that part of the network as I lived nearby, and they would have told him immediately to move off and they'd help. Sadly, none of them were working, and the only person who responded was reported by me in the past for being a racist with other staff about middle-aged Chinese women customers who didn't know English very well. He said, "Oh, is that the guy with the squeaky voice?" Yes, he's very dangerous. He then got upset that I had a high-vis vest on as it was dark, and I needed to use it to walk back home as the streets where I live don't have a lot of lighting, with recklessly fast drivers. I had it rolled up, snugly in my armpit, and never wore it while I was at the station. Did he then call my parents now and it'd be all sorted? No. He went and called security and demanded them to do something. Security then decided to call the police on me and get more staff as backup. All I remember was him saying camera no 5, and then I couldn't hold on to this thick pillar I was using to stand. I was never offered somewhere to sit during that time, and there was nothing else for me to grab onto. I fell down quite hard backwards onto the ground. 2 customers came over to help. One of them is who we'll call the Chicken Man. Chicken Man used to work on the railways for many years, and now works with a few heritage companies. He's also a local of the area. He used to mock my squeaky voice when I was little, which wasn't okay as it was a legitimate medical condition where my larynx muscles got so tight that only those high-pitched notes could come out. It made my life a living hell while he went. Insert chicken, dog, duck, and cat noises here. This only stopped when he saw a drop attack happen a few weeks before this incident, and a lady who we'll call Natalie, as she's the opposite of a Karen. As I couldn't speak, I used my watch to call my mom, who's always available to explain what's happening and to help the best that she can. As she was explaining everything to Natalie, Jeffries was ignoring everything, saying, "I need to be a deterrent. The police will deal with her. It's not my responsibility." Eventually, she had to ring up to drive over there with the support worker, apparently fuming in the car about what happened, and quite rightly. In the meantime, Chicken Man and Nat were telling Jeff off and trying to get him to do something. But with his mask off his nose, he went and yelled at both of them saying, "Oh, don't cause me any more problems. He doesn't need first aid. We need to get rid of him." And that answer, which has been tried and tested multiple times and has failed, is the police. And the Chicken Man was saying, "You don't need to bring the police here. Just wait for his mother to come. You heard her." But he ignored everything that he said, and all the staff ganged up on him, and they forced him to leave the station intimidated. There were about 3, 4 staff, which then turned into about 6, 7. But the time this was over, they were yelling and swearing at him. "We know about you. Move off, mate. Clear off." He then said, "You don't know who I am." Then he said, "I don't care who you are." It was only Nat left helping me at this point. I was crying in tears, wondering why me? She was comforting me and stood by my side while all the staff gave a cold, dead stare as they went and put a barrier up, almost hitting her. She then, trying to distract me from all the drama that was happening, told me a story about a black cat who had 10 beautiful kittens that went to Hawaii. I never heard the end of the story as they constantly interrupted her just to get scolded at. They then had their phones at full blast, even though they were in their pockets that could just feel it vibrate. And then all of these crowds were gathering with them, yelling at everyone. It caused me to panic even more from the sheer amount of noise that was going on. When she went and told them to please quiet down, Jeffries went and yelled at her even more, saying, "What are you telling us to do? I'm in charge here. He doesn't need first aid. You're creating another obstacle. If you continue your attitude, the police will come and fix you up as well." You might remember he said it was not his responsibility. What a hypocrite. Then she said, "But there's a disabled person lying on the ground. Help it." Then Jeffries interrupts her and screams, "This person is not disabled. He walks fine. He talks fine. He's just doing this on purpose to give us all a hard time." Then she yells, "You're a e-hole." Jeff, either stay and be quiet or go. Nat, sorry? Jeff, well, I'm not sorry. I'm gonna tell you what to do. I got stuff to do here, and you don't have to make it worse. He needs to use a reverse card here. Nat, did you just wake up and think, oh, I'm gonna be an off-hole today? Jeff, my job is to look after 300,000 people, not you. That's a lie. Nat, but there's someone here lying down on the floor. Interrupted. Jeff, he doesn't need first aid, madam. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. Now the police are gonna fix you up as well. Go, get out of here. Just as she walked out, I was trying to call out thank you to her, but Jeffries decided to take all the credit of the thank you and say, that's all right, as she cried out, this is the worst thing I have ever seen. Then Jeff said, good, go, I'm not here to listen to your rubbish. Boy, my mom would be mad to hear her rubbish. Actual medical evidence that works be thrown out the window. And she's not just any normal mother. She's also a disability advocate and planner as well. They then went and laughed and mocked at her saying, I can't believe it. As I was stuck, down on the ground in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, in the cold open air with no warmth at all. I was in agony by this point with pain all over my back. If this was somebody who had cardiac arrest, they'd be dead by now and charged with manslaughter. The police officer was coming down the stairs and instantly changed their demeanor. They went and put a jacket under my head. Then my support worker quickly arrived with another jacket as a blanket to keep me warm and stay by my side. But then Jeffries made her go away saying, it'd be best to speak to the police officer. He's fine now. But I wasn't fine, you jerk, which meant that once again I was back to where I was. There was also a bench right next to me that they refused to help me onto this whole time. My mom then came and was in the brink of tears seeing me in the state that I was in. They then tries to take her away to speak to the police officer, but she stood her ground. She told them all the things Sydney Trains promised to do, but they did absolutely nothing. Nobody had a clue what was happening, and is just another story of the messy organization they are. Jeffries also went and repainted the story to make himself look like the savior looking out for me, and that the bystanders were evil people with their own agendas. And everyone almost believed that until I showed my family secret recordings I made of the incident and published it online for the whole world to see. The police officer was very helpful and cleared me of any wrongdoing very quickly. And eventually Mum was able to convince them all to lift me to a seat and then had to stumble all the way back to the car. The moment that the doors closed, I yelled, screamed, and cried the rest of the day about what happened. And this still continues till this day, even at that exact same spot where this story happened. And I'll definitely share some more stories if this goes well. Edit 1. I've noticed that some people have complained here that I didn't have any medical ID with me. I actually had multiple. There's a medical ID on my Apple Watch which you can access by pressing and holding the side button and swiping the middle bar on the screen. I remember Nat reading that, but Jeffries did refuse to read it, still going on his crazy temper tantrum. There was also a sunflower card I had in my wallet which had my name and my mother's name and number. We were and still are pressured by Sydney Trains to use the sunflower lanyard. We've told them no because of how it's designed. It can cause quite a huge safety risk when some crooks and thugs try to attack me on PT. If it was, say, the Maritime Museum, that'd be fine to wear a badge. But PT is not the Maritime Museum. My OT made a medical alert bracelet just for me and told Sydney Trains this is what we are using. Sydney Trains' invisible disability training completely rely on this piece of cardboard, and have been telling practically everyone in Sydney about this when we told them when we were consulted about this years ago that these problems would arise, and how they are saying it makes me concerned that people are going to assume that without the lanyard, they are faking their disability. I've had people come to me saying they are concerned about wearing the lanyard because people keep staring and sniggering at them. Some just as big young men don't want something with pretty flowers over them, and some just don't want to be identified all the time. Like that's borderline dystopian. There's sometimes where it's more appropriate not to show or say you have one, and sometimes you have to deal with both at the same time. Edit 2. Some changes will be made on this post if I've noticed I've left something out that some people seem to not get. It's even worse when you consider that I love the trains and have dedicated most of my life to them. Yet they still betray me at every point of the road. Nobody ever apologized. Nobody ever took any action on them. And they have done nothing to prevent this from happening again. It's now too late. The damage to myself has been extreme. And even worse incidents have happened has caused me to become a shell of what I used to be like. I even had a PTSD flashback and a panic attack just making this post. Even speaking out publicly and getting almost 1,100 people signing a petition against what's been happening has done nothing. He's still there to this day and has tried to go after me since about what happened. And now I have to run away from the station whenever I see him. It's very tough on me, as it's an essential station to me as some of my doctors work there, the council is there, and is a major interchange to get to essential services. I can't really put into many more words about what's happened, except that this was harassment, humiliation, and discrimination. Sydney Trains betrayed myself, my friends, including their own employees, and my family, and have stuck themselves on the ground and are now playing politics about this. There's even been staff that have tried to go after me saying, "Oh, you should have been with a support worker at all times. You should have said your name," etc., etc. Hopefully, this time I won't get battered down by people that don't understand and put an end to this injustice. I can't even imagine how it must have felt to lose both your parents and your sister. You are so brave for making it through such a difficult time, and I am really impressed with the things you've accomplished since then. My heart goes out to you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the video on your screen right now, where a Karen teacher pulls and breaks insulin pump, thinking that it's my phone. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.